Minister, I suppose I welcome the fact that this bill has been finally brought before the Dáil. It is clearly a step in the right direction. I think very few of us, other than those who've been in the situation that homeowners in Clare, Mayo, Donegal and other parts of the country are in, can imagine what it must be like to be in your home, to be paying a mortgage, to be struggling to be paying a mortgage. Everybody's struggling to pay a mortgage now. It's going to get worse next winter, and to have that home crumble around you and to wonder, do you have any comeback and where can you come back? I mean, will you take on? Do you have the wherewithal? Do you have the financial reserves? Do you have the mental reserves to take on one of the biggest companies in the country? A company with huge tentacles right around the world, and certainly tentacles into the political elite of Ireland. And feeling that you're very much left on your own. That must be, from a mental health perspective, that must be truly horrendous. So I'm glad that this scheme is finally being published, and I welcome that. There are facets of the scheme that concern me. There are facets of the bill that concern me. And what particularly concerns me is now that we finally have a bill, that we're going to ram it through. And that's what we're going to do next Thursday. There's going to be the discussion of it today, which is, in fairness to you, Minister, quite long. So we can discuss the generalities at length today. But when it comes down to the specifics, we're going to ram it through next Thursday. And that creates a suspicion in my mind. Well, why allow so much time for the generalities but such little time to go through the specifics? Is it because it doesn't add up? Is it because there are inconsistencies? Is it because we don't want to focus on those issues? And I just wonder, because we are stuck for time at the end of the Dáil. We always are stuck for time at the end of the Dáil, because we have statements on this, that and the other, statements on matters of general irrelevance with the benefit of hindsight, and then we ram all the legislation through in a fortnight, and here we are again. And poor old Michael D. Higgins will be up at night with burning the midnight oil in his candle, trying to read the legislation and get through it in time to meet the constitutional requirement of signing it in time. He did complain about it, of course, before, but like I suppose anybody's concerns with regard to what this government does, they fell on pretty much deaf ears. Now, there's an issue that I raised at the committee last week. And that is, I disagree respectfully with the previous speaker, with whom I'm in a technical group. It is important to save money. It is very important that people are bailed out, that people are put in the position that they would be in had their home not been defective, had they not been sold defective blocks. That's hugely important. That has to be the first priority, and I completely accept that. And I don't think this scheme is going to do that, unfortunately. The second priority has to be to do so in a manner that is as cheap as possible for the general taxpayers, given the multiple and competing demands. And last night we had a lot of discussion of what those demands are and are going to be into the future. So it's not as important as putting people back in the position they would be in had they not been sold defective concrete blocks. But the next priority for me has to be saving money, and I have a lot of concerns in that regard about this scheme. Downsizing is not allowed. So if the money that you get from the state doesn't meet the cost of rebuilding your house, instead of building a 250 square metre house, you build a 150 square metre house, because that's all the money that you're being given. Well, you're going to be penalised for that, and I simply don't understand I understand the priority of saving money, but I don't understand that priority. Why not allow people, if they don't have the money, if they're at a certain age that they can't remortgage, if they're in their 60s, and I know of people in Clare who are retired, paid off their mortgage, spent their lifetime paying it off, by the way, in service to the state, paid it off, and we're looking forward to their retirement. Now they find that their home is crumbling around them. They will not get the full cost of it. They're not in a position to raise a mortgage. And now you're telling them that they can't downsize. So I would ask you to consider that. It's on page 23, lines 6 to 14 of the bill. The next thing is around the issue of subrogation. That means that once the minister pays out money, say €150,000, well then anybody's claim, the first €150,000 of anybody's claim, the minister has a call on that. I've no problem with that as an idea, but the way it's drafted will ensure, in my view, that the only people who will pay for any of this is the Exchequer. That those who manufactured concrete blocks, defective concrete blocks, for profit, large amounts of profit, big companies making lots of money are going to be let off the hook by this, and the Exchequer, the poor Irish Exchequer, with all of the competing demands on that Exchequer, is going to be put wholly on the line because of this subrogation clause. Because if the first 150, if your claim is for 250, and the first 150 are going to go to the minister, well, why on earth would you sue if you're being offered, because the first thing that anyone will do is make an offer in a civil case. If you have any sort of reasonable case, they'll offer you, if you're looking for, 200,000 euros, they'll offer you 150. And you'll be well advised to take that, because no matter how good a case is, there are always weaknesses. So you'll be well advised to take it. So there's absolutely no incentive after this scheme for the homeowners to initiate cases. As for the minister, well, the minister may exercise if the minister has a right of action, which he accrues to him on the payment of the money, he may exercise it. It's a general aspiration. Now, I'd like to beef that up in a way that doesn't cost the state money. I'm not saying that the minister shall pursue every cause of action in an amendment that I've made, but I'm saying that the minister shall give a report in respect of every payment made, whether or not that after 2 years and every year thereafter up to for 10 years, that the minister shall report on how many cases he took. At least it keeps it in focus, and that report be laid before both houses of the Oireachtas, because ultimately both houses of the Oireachtas are responsible for expenditure, public expenditure, and we're talking about 3 billion euros. We're talking about 2-point-something billion euros, generally accepted to be 3 billion euros. Inflation going the way it is, it'll be an awful lot more. So I'm not happy to sign a blank cheque on this without knowing that at least the minister is going to seek to recover some money from those who manufactured defective concrete blocks for profit and made a profit, made a huge amount of profit, directors' bonuses, the whole shebang, and have the Exchequer as the only person on the line for the huge damage that they caused. And by the way, we're not going to fully pay for that damage, has been much elucidated in this chamber, but to the extent that we do, and I'd like that we were paying more and that we were paying 100% of the cost to the poor householders who are the victims here. But we're not. But to the extent that we are paying any money at all, I'd like to know that it's not that the expenditure for that is not going to have to compete with the expenditure for childcare, for the hospital in Limerick, for education, for health, for social welfare, for all of the competing demands in the Exchequer, and the big companies, the CRHs of this world, the listed companies, walk away scot-free and smile and say, Jesus, that was some get out of jail clause, wasn't it, that they all signed because the government rammed it through, and sure, geez, all the lads were thinking about their holidays and they didn't really look at it. Because that's what's going to happen. I've no doubt about it. So I would ask you to at least look at the amendments. Even if you're going to ram it through, do me the courtesy. Do my constituents that I represent, and the constituents that every deputy here represents, Deputy Farrell, Deputy McHugh, Deputy Pringle, McLaughlin, O'Brien and Doherty, and my independent colleague from the Midwest, Richard, do our constituents the courtesy of at least looking at our amendments. It's not that much to expect. Going through the amendments, I've also proposed that the minister notify somebody if they are going to take a case based on their cause of action that the minister that has vested in the minister. And the reason for that is because then the person might take a piggyback case on the back of it, so that if they're only going to get 80% of the cost of it, and that's going to go to the minister, they might at least be in a position to take a case at the same time to reduce costs, to increase their chances of success in being able to persuade somebody to take the case, that they could take a case for the other 20%. If the minister is going to. So the minister, A, notify the Dáil and the Oireachtas of how many cases he has taken, because at the moment it will be shrouded in secrecy, and that the minister notify how many cases are taken and give reasons for the case. Now, there may be a number of cases where you will say that the Chief State Solicitor advises that we didn't have a very high likelihood of success. Well, so be it. But at least make sure that every case is looked at. At least make sure that we try to get back as much money from these companies as possible. Not that we just throw our hands up and expose the Exchequer one more time, something we do every decade in this House, expose the Exchequer to a huge amount of money and then shuffle around the place and wonder, God, how did that happen? Well, it happens because people rush legislation through without sufficient analysis of it. The cause of action, I've also put in an amendment specifying when a cause of action accrues or when the time runs from. And I'm saying in this that in cases that have not yet been taken, that you have a cause of action once you have a report saying that you have defective concrete blocks. A report as defined in the bill, or a report from a competent engineer. Now that's, because lots of people have cracking in their houses. Their houses are cracking for 5 or 6 years. They didn't know why. Are they to be penalised because they didn't immediately think of something that nobody knew anything about? That they didn't think it was pyrite, and now the time has gone to take a case? That they ought to have known then that it was pyrite? But how many people knew about pyrite 6 years ago if there was cracking in their house? How are they supposed to take a case then? Are they to be met with the defence of, oh, well, you ought to have known that your house had pyrite? I mean, had you happened to meet a leading world expert from Switzerland down at the local, he would have told you it was pyrite. We certainly had access to that level of expertise. I mean, the CRHs of this world. So that I'm saying that the cause of action accrues from when you have a report confirming it's pyrite. And that's not unreasonable. There's a logic to that, because that's what you're looking for in order to bail people out. You're looking for a report confirming, what is it called? It's called a business, a building condition assessment report, as defined in the bill, or an engineer's report. That's when your cause of action runs from. And that secondly, the time period within which, because every case is limited in time, you must act quickly, that time is frozen, and there's a precedent for that. It's the Civil Liability Act that introduced PIAB, that the time is frozen from when the Minister gives the notification until the Minister initiates, if the Minister notifies, from when the right vests in the Minister until such time as he notifies the homeowner whether or not he's going to take a case, that the time period is frozen. It just enables people to take cases. It gives individuals and it gives the Exchequer a reasonable chance of recovering, and it's important, recovering some of the astronomical costs that this is going to be, so that those who caused this problem are not going to walk away scot-free, smirking in their rearview mirror at the Exchequer.
Government also accepts that the current scheme, while well-intentioned, did not work as intended, and that the difficulties and challenges which arose needed to be addressed. We are also legislating for a much more enhanced, workable and fit-for-purpose grant scheme which responds to the issues raised by homeowners and other stakeholders during the extensive consultations over the last 12 months. I know Minister O'Brien has been in County Clare and other areas looking at homeowners and meeting them in their homes in connection with this issue. I also met with many residents myself, along with Deputy McHugh, at the Convention Centre last year, and heard firsthand essentially what they were going through, the anguish they were going through, their frustrations, and essentially the huge challenge that they face in their daily lives. The enhanced scheme addresses the challenges and difficulties experienced with the current scheme by removing the financial barrier to the scheme entry by having the housing agency carry out testing of home and absorbing the cost, limiting homeowner outlay to between €500 and €700 for building condition assessment, the cost of which is recoupable, conferring exempt development status on remediation works approved under the scheme, increasing the overall grant cap from €247,500 to €420,000, which is a significant increase, providing funding for alternative accommodation and storage costs and immediate repair works up to a value of €25,000, adding the counties of Clare and Limerick to the scheme and providing a pathway for addition for other counties if required, a simplification of the application process and a significant reduction in administration and bureaucracy associated with the scheme. The introduction of damage threshold for entry to the grant scheme, which will not be set and used to prevent homeowners accessing the scheme, but to ensure that they will enter the scheme at the appropriate time, and so as to ensure that the worst affected homes are prioritised. The establishment of an independent appeals process with key decisions under the scheme now subject to an appeal. The addition of rented dwellings registered with the RTB on or before the 1st of November 2021 now eligible for the scheme. A certificate of remediation grounded in primary legislation. a government guarantee in respect of remediation works being provided through the availability of a second grant option if required for a period of 40 years. Provision for inflation as required. Confirmation of eligibility for SEAI grants for thermal upgrades and bespoke arrangements by SEAI to manage such applications, and provision for the introduction of an Exchequer-funded grant scheme for local authority and approved housing-owned social homes. In addition to these specific enhancements, which are set out in the bill, Government has also agreed to reviewing the existing IS 465 standard for the assessment, testing and categorisation of homes suspected of being impacted by defective concrete blocks. Review the concrete block standard, including the standard for aggregates. Review the potential impact on foundations in homes by defective concrete blocks. Review the potential impact on full cavity insulation on homes impacted by defective concrete blocks. Appoint a senior counsel to consider the issue of wrongdoers and their pursuit, and the expansion of the Department of Health of the My Mind service to assist vulnerable homeowners and their families in regard to mental health issues which have arisen owing to the impact of this issue. The remediation of dwellings damaged by use of concrete blocks bill can address the challenges being faced by affected homeowners. The passage of this very important piece of legislation will mark the beginning of the end of the challenges being faced by impacted homeowners by giving them a much enhanced and fit-for-purpose grant scheme. Minister O'Brien will continue to work closely with all members of the Oireachtas and listen carefully to their views. I think we can all agree that it is essential that this bill passes through all stages of the Dáil and Seanad in a timely fashion, and that the enhanced scheme can be opened for applications as soon as possible. I thank all deputies for their engagement on the bill, and Minister O'Brien will respond to the specific questions and amendments proposed at committee and final stage. I commend the bill to the House. Cathaoirleach.